Thanks for having me. Hi guys, so as Matt said, my name's Oscar and I'm co-founder of Opearlo, and we're a voice design agency. So what that means is we specialise in helping organisations and brands build voice applications on the Amazon Alexa platform, Google Assistant, Microsoft Cortana, things like that. And then we also have a voice-specific analytics platform that can help you get insights into what people are asking for when they're using your voice apps. But in terms of what I'm actually going to talk about today, there's really two things that I want to kind of get across to everybody here. One is I'd like to try and get across some of the excitement that I have around voice computing and voice as an interface, and I hope that after the talk you'll all be really excited to go away and play with this new voice technology and to start building Alexa skills. Because it really is simple to get started. You can design, build and get an Alexa skill published out there to all of the millions of people that have an Alexa device in less than 20 minutes if you want to. And so hopefully the first part of the talk will get everybody super excited about Alexa, and then the second part I just want to share some of the best practices that we've kind of picked up along the way in terms of designing and building Alexa skills. A few little things that are really easy to do that will make your voice experiences a lot more usable. And feel free to send me an email, oscar@opearlo.com, or reach out to me on Twitter if you have any questions after this, or you want to talk about anything to do with voice. So first of all, I just wanted to start with a bit of kind of background and history and how we got here. So we've been around for about 200,000 years, and for about 100,000 years we've actually had the ability to communicate with each other. And only in the past 100 years has digital technology started to appear, and we've started to be able to do incredibly amazing things with technology. And I think the past two talks around cloud technology make this shift even more exciting, because suddenly you don't need a huge IT organisation to be able to do all of these amazing things. The story about the guy who made his 20 million on satellite images, like that's now possible to do on your own on a weekend. So I think it's really exciting. But it's only in the past few years, and I'll explain why, that voice has arrived as a kind of next major disruption in computing. You know, voice recognition, speech recognition technology has actually been around for quite a while, but it's never really lived up to its promises. It's only in the past couple of years that, due to the advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning, that the accuracy has actually got to a level where these systems are now usable for people. Microsoft last year announced that they've actually achieved human levels of parity with their speech recognition technology. It's as accurate as humans. And voice is great because it's a really natural way to interact with technology, and everybody knows how to do it. And for some people it's still a little bit weird. Just out of interest, how many people have heard of Alexa in this room? Cool. How many people own an Alexa-enabled device like the Amazon Echo? And how many people have tried one? Tried speaking to one? Okay. What I found from talking to loads of people and also doing it myself is that it is quite a weird experience when you first try it for some people. And it definitely, like we heard a bit about kind of mind shifts when new technologies come along. There's definitely a mind shift that's going to be needed with voice as an interface. But it is happening. And one thing that's really, really interesting is that with the advent of things like the Internet of Things, and as digital technology just becomes a part of our everyday lives, voice is actually a perfect fit for that, because imagine you've got all of these internet-connected devices in your life. Having a screen or a web app for each of them, or a mobile app for each of them to control, is actually quite inefficient, whereas with voice you're able to actually control all of these seamlessly through one interface. Another really interesting thing I find about the trend is how really young people and a much older generation have taken to voice. Young people, I hear so many stories about people's kids that just spend all day chatting to Siri or chatting to Alexa. They really take to it, and because they've grown up with these technologies, they don't have as much of a barrier. And then there's also the older generation for whom the smartphone is actually still a really alien thing, and it doesn't quite click with them. Voice is not like that, because everybody has grown up knowing how to have a conversation. So there is this shift, and I think we're going to see more and more that voice becomes the first interface that people actually have with an organization or a product or a service or anything like that. So the Amazon Echo is great, everyone's heard of it, but it's the first Alexa-enabled device, and it's really the market leader at the moment in terms of digital assistants in the home. It's got great reviews, and the numbers of devices that are being sold is massive. It's forecast that there's going to be up to 25 million devices sold by the end of this year. And if you're a developer of a voice app, that gives you access to, 25 million plus users that are just keen to try out what you build. And the great thing is, it's super early days, so if you build something, get it out there on the App Store, there's a likely chance that millions of people may try it. And I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a second. So how does it actually work? Well, the Amazon Echo is essentially just a microphone and a speaker that's connected to the internet. And there's some great talks out there. You can go and search them around how you can build your own Alexa device using a Raspberry Pi or even just a custom chip that you buy. But really, the power of the Amazon Echo device is actually the cloud service that it connects into, which is the Alexa service. There's two key parts to it. There's the Alexa Skills Kit, which allows you to build apps for Alexa and enhance Alexa's capability. That's what I'm going to be focusing the rest of this talk on. And then there's also the Alexa Voice Service, which allows hardware and device manufacturers to actually bring Alexa into their own devices. I'm not going to cover that much more today because it's a huge topic, but that's really, really important, even if you're thinking about building an app for Alexa, because what it means is that you don't actually have to have an Amazon Echo to access Alexa. So Ford, BMW and VW have all announced that they're going to be bringing Alexa into their new model cars, and loads of the other companies are following with the other digital assistants. So it just means for you guys, as hopefully you will be Alexa skill developers, that gives you a really great opportunity to reach a wider audience. But we're going to focus on the Alexa Skills Kit, which allows you to build apps for Alexa. And this is just a few examples, some of the launch partners there when Alexa launched in the UK. So we've got Just Eat, Uber, The Guardian, National Rail. You can do things like Alexa ask The Guardian for today's headlines, Alexa tell Starbucks to start my order. So they're just a few examples of well-known brands that are on the Alexa platform. And this is the actual Alexa skill store. So this is available as a web app or via mobile. And this is where if you publish your skills, they'll appear and users can go in and install them through this companion app. They can also install your skills through voice just by saying Alexa enable Starbucks, for example. So hopefully you guys will publish some skills and they'll be up there. Please reach out to me on Twitter if you do, that'd be great. And so, how do we actually build voice applications for Alexa? Well, there's two key components. The first is the voice user interface, which is where you actually define what kind of phrasing and what kind of commands people are actually going to be able to use within your voice app. And then the second part to it is the actual programming logic, which is where you take what a user says and you fulfill that in whatever way you want to. The voice user interface is all managed in the Amazon developer portal. So they have a graphical user interface where you can configure all of that. And essentially what that does is abstracts all of the complex speech recognition, natural language understanding away from you and gives you a really easy way to build a simple voice model. And then you've got the programming logic, which you can host on any HTTPS endpoint. Amazon's recommended way of doing it is with AWS Lambda, which makes it even more easier. So you don't have to set up a server or anything like that. But that's how things fit together. And then to dive into that in a bit more detail, this is how, when somebody interacts with your voice application, what's actually going on in terms of the different components involved. So essentially, a user will make a request like, Alexa, tell Uber to get me a ride. The audio is streamed into the Alexa service into the cloud, and what the Alexa service will then do is, using the voice model that you provided, it will use its natural language understanding to generate a JSON payload that is then sent to your skills backend. So you can see there, the Alexa service will send a JSON payload, including the user's intent, to your backend service, which can then integrate with whatever other services it needs to. Your backend then just needs to respond with another JSON payload back to Alexa, which will convert the output text that you set back into speech, and it will speak back to the user. So it's relatively simple, but it's important before you start diving into the code to actually have a good view of that in your mind. And then within that, as a developer of an Alexa skill, there's really 3 things that you need to be concerned about. It's actually 4, but just 3 for simplicity. There's intent, which you can think of as just the different areas of functionality within your skill that a user can do. So for example, here we're using a basic fact template. We have a get new fact intent. We have some built-in Amazon intents, so apply, stop, and cancel. They're the different portions of functionality that your user can actually can do. And then you have your utterances, which are the set of phrases that you submit to Amazon and say, okay, if a user says one of these, trigger towards my intent. And importantly, you don't have to list out every single one. So this isn't just a simple a matching thing. Amazon's natural language understanding will take all of the utterance you put in, and then even if a user says something relatively different, it will route it to the right intent. And then effectively, for each one of your intents, you will have a handler function in your backend that will just do whatever you need it to do and then respond to Alexa. And this is how a user will actually invoke your skill. So there's 2 ways. You can either have a direct launch, which is where you don't actually specify an intent. So for example, Alexa, open space facts. Or you can have a one-shot invocation where you're actually combining your invocation with an utterance that triggers an intent. So you can see here, Alexa, ask space facts for trivia. So they're the different ways you can invoke your skills. And one of the things that's important to think about when you're designing your skill is actually what the invocation and utterance combination is going to be, because the best skills out there are the ones that actually hide themselves from the user. What that means is, instead of the user saying, Alexa, open Uber and blah, 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 or Alexa, tell Uber to get me a ride, you just hide it somehow. So I have an Alexa skill called Inspire Me, that the actual invocation is Inspire Me. So when users say, Alexa, inspire me, they feel like it's just a natural interaction with Alexa. And that simple thing has caused, the amount of users I get is absolutely crazy. Like over 300,000 users, and I built it in a weekend. So that's the opportunity you guys have to actually reach people. And one more thing before I get onto the challenge that we're announcing is that this is all free to you as developers. If you want to build a voice application, get experience of this new technology that is voice, reach millions of customers that have Alexa-enabled devices, and learn about cloud technology in the process. It's all free for you. If you build on AWS Lambda, you get up to 1 million hits a month for free, and then if you go over that, you'll actually Amazon will provide you with specific credits if you're an Alexa skill developer. So effectively, you're never going to be charged for your infrastructure, for your hosting for this. And also, 2 weeks ago, Amazon actually announced Alexa skills. So if anyone here is interested in building games for Alexa or voice-based games, I would definitely recommend you build an Alexa skill, get it up there. Chances are you'll make quite a bit of money. A friend of mine who basically all he did was download the quiz template from Amazon's GitHub, change the content, put it onto the Alexa store. He did it in a weekend, and he's making over $1,000 a month from Amazon paying him to have done that. So, go build a game and make $1,000 a month. For the second half of this talk, what I wanted to do is just kind of share some of the experience that we've had over the past 2 years building Alexa skills for clients. Because what you'll actually find as you get into it a bit more is that the technical aspects of developing for voice is relatively easy once you've had a bit of practice. The challenge is really about the design of the voice application, the design of the voice user experience, because it's such a new interface, and you have to be so careful, because if you frustrate a user with voice, they're much less likely to actually use your application. So I'm just going to go through some of what we've learned over the past 2 years. And where I like to start with this is asking this question of what are people's expectations of artificial intelligence and digital assistants? And the fact is that they're really, really high because most people, when they think of digital assistants, when they think of artificial intelligence, they think about these films and they think about these incredibly powerful kind of sentient, intelligent beings. But what's the reality of the current technology? And it's actually still day one. It's super early with voice. We are in the Nokia 3310 days of voice as a computing interface. And this is really, really important to think about when you're developing for voice, because when users' expectations don't equal the reality of what the technology can do, what that leads to is frustration. And the one thing you don't want to do is frustrate your users. So really, really important to keep that in mind. And with that, how can we build voice experience that actually delight our users and don't frustrate them? And I'm just going to go over a couple of quick ways that we find that's a really great way to do this. The first one, it sounds like it's an obvious one, but put it up there because it's really important. Just keep it really simple what you're trying to do. Don't overcomplicate it. If you're an organisation trying to build for voice, don't try and port your whole web application or mobile application into the voice interface. Chances are you won't have the voice design expertise to get it right, and chances are the actual speech recognition technology is not going to cater for your domain. The second one is about managing users' expectations. The third one, designing for voice, and then finally, monitoring and optimizing. So I'll go through those super quickly. So this one, I touched upon it, but it's a very quick one. Just keep it simple. Like, if you're just developing a skill to go through the competition, and it's a fact skill, that's fine. But if you're thinking about doing something for your company or your organization, just take a tiny portion of your customer journey and try it out with that. Don't try and port your entire web or mobile application over. And test it out with users, because what you'll find is what you expect your users to ask your application is completely different to what they actually ask. So try and keep it as simple as possible. And within that, the second one is around managing your users' expectations. So it comes back to, if your users are expecting your voice application to respond like one of these assistants in the sci-fi films, and it comes back and it can only respond with one piece of text, that's really going to frustrate people. And all you have to do is go and look at the reviews on the Amazon Skill Store. Most of them are negative. And what we found is that actually a big portion of the reason for that is just because you haven't set your users' expectations properly. So there's a few ways to do this. A lot of them are really simple. The first one is make sure you have a landing page and, if possible, a video demo for your skill, because then you can really clearly kind of frame your users' expectations of what they can do with this voice application and what they can't do. What they can't do being even more important. There's a great example of the Capital One skill. Go and check that out if you want to see a great example of a landing page and video demo. The second one is the skill description. Again, it sounds simple, but when a user first comes to your voice app, they'll see it on the skill store, they'll click into it, all they have is this description before they click enable. And once they click enable, you're leaving it up to their imagination to come up with some kind of phrasing of what they might do. And we've seen from all of the user testing workshops that we do that that's a bad idea. So here's your chance to take the user exactly where you want them to go and give them the exact commands they want to use, so that when they use it for the first time, it's a good experience. The third one is the Alexa card prompt. So this is a visual card that you can return as well as a voice response when you're building your skills. And it's a great example of where the entire response doesn't have to be via voice. Yes, the voice aspect is the cool new interface, but your entire application or use case doesn't have to be through voice. Voice can just be a tiny part of it. So you can use things like the Alexa cards to return more detailed information. And then finally, similar to the landing page and video demo, a welcome email that just gives the user even more information about what they can actually do. And so a bit more around like how you can actually design for voice. So when you're thinking about building your Alexa skills or Google Actions for that matter, these are just a few things that I would keep in mind just to make sure that you're not annoying your users with the kind of thing that you're returning. So the first one is to spend time on edge cases and what we call the half-happy paths. So what this means is if the user has asked for something that you haven't catered for, instead of giving them a response like, sorry, I can't do that, or I didn't understand your request, try and bring them back into the core of the functionality. So offer them a suggestion of something that they can do, rather than just returning an error message, because we've seen this so much through our observations that that's one way you can really frustrate your users. The second one is to minimize choice. So obviously you don't want to hear a big long list of responses and have to try and memorize that. Try and leave it to no more than 3 options. And linked in with that is to minimize pressure. So Alexa actually has an 8-second window before it will shut down after it's given a response and expecting the user to come back with something. And 8 seconds is not necessarily that much time for a user to make a decision about what they want and then think about what they want to say back. So always give a kind of, the third option should always be something that relieves that pressure and gives them more time to think. So instead of saying, would you like option A, option B, or option C, respond to the user with something like, would you like option A, option B, or to hear more details, something along the lines of that. The fourth one is around utterance expansion. So you saw in the previous slide, for each intent, you need to try and come up with all of the different phrases that your user might say. And this can be quite a tedious, long process. But there's plenty of good tools out there available. There's a tool called an utterance expander, which allows you to actually build expansion queries that you can generate like tens of thousands of utterances rather than having to write them out one by one. It saves a lot of time. And if you've got a production skill that you're managing multiple releases for, to try and think, do we have that utterance in our list of 20,000, using an expansion process makes that a lot easier. And then finally, just keep Alexa's responses short and succinct. She speaks quite slow, and you don't want to bore your users. And then finally, what you want to do is monitor and optimize your skill. So one of the things we find, and we see all of the time, is that a lot of organizations will actually release an Alexa skill onto the App Store, and that's it. They forget about it. They don't necessarily have plans for when it's live because nobody's really done this before. And it's really, really important to, in the first 2 weeks, in the first couple of months, to actually monitor what your users are doing and trying to come up with optimizations. So we have a platform, the Opearlo voice platform, which basically gives you voice-specific metrics and insights into how people are using your voice apps, and it also allows you to update the content dynamically without going into the codes. So what that means is you can vary your digital assistance responses based on a campaign, for example, which is a great way to increase retention. So we've got a bunch of different voice-specific metrics. Rather than kind of drilling into these, what I want to do is give you an example. So we recently built a recipe skill for Unilever, and what we found was that we found 2 things through the analytics. One, we found that there were certain recipes our users were asking for that the recipe management database that we had in the back end didn't actually support. And actually, these were quite common recipes. And so what that allowed us to do is go and speak to the content team and get them to add in the content for the V2. The other thing we found was that we basically found all of the common ingredient names, dish names, dietary requirements, things like that. And we built them into our voice model because we wanted our recipe voice app to be as extensive as possible. But what we found after monitoring the analytics is that sometimes people would, certain ingredient names would confuse Alexa because Amazon just hadn't thought about that. So an example was mince and mince, as in mincemeat and mince that I put in my mouth after I've had a coffee. Alexa always confused those two, and we saw that that was coming up a lot in terms of what people were asking for that then didn't lead to a recipe. So we actually identified about 30 of those specific phrases, removed them from the voice model, and the skill showed a massive improvement in accuracy. So definitely check out the Opearlo voice platform. It's at opearlo.com/analytics, and if you have any questions about how to get it installed, it takes 5 minutes, but feel free to reach out to me. I just wanted to, before I finish, and I'll take some questions at the end as well. Before I finish, I just wanted to talk about where I see the future of voice as a computing interface. Now, obviously, I would say this because my company is completely based around it, but hopefully some of the stuff I'm going to say gets you excited about building Alexa skills. So the first thing I want you to think about is that in not that long amount of time, every home is going to have a digital assistant. This is not just my prediction, the data is backing this up in terms of the purchase numbers of Amazon Echoes. And that's going to become really, really powerful. What it's going to lead to is that often the first brand touch point will become through the digital assistant. Instead of users, and this is going to take a shift in psychology from people, but instead of when you want something from a brand, you want a question answered, you want to find an update on your service or your product or your subscription, instead of taking your laptop out, going to a web browser, logging into their application on the web browser, navigating through the hierarchical tabs to find the bit of information you want, or getting out your phone, logging into the app and going through the navigation, you're just going to ask your digital assistant to find that information for you. So that's, I think, something that's really powerful. And if you start now when we're in the early stage and get experience of things like voice design, it's going to help you going forward when we do actually get to that point. The second thing to note is that multi-platform is going to be key as well. So right now, Amazon Alexa is the market leader in terms of numbers, in terms of the quality, in terms of the number of apps available. But Google have released Google Home, which has Google Actions. They had their conference last week and they've announced massive updates to that feature, which is going to drive a lot of people towards that platform. Microsoft have released Cortana. Apple are rumoured to be releasing an Amazon Echo competitor over this summer as well. So you need to think about cross-platform because of those reasons. And then the last two are some that I think are really, really cool and are actually going to expand the type of things and sentiment analysis. And for this, I kind of like to use an example that we hear about a lot when we're talking to clients about voice, is the customer service use case. So say your organization had a list of 100 FAQs that you had on your website and you wanted to bring into a voice app to allow them to just ask the digital assistant instead of calling up a call center. With traditional analytics, what you'd be able to actually see is which FAQs are most popular for my customer base. I can see this one's the top one, or these are in the top 20%. Maybe we have an issue there in terms of our customer journey. But when sentiment analysis comes into these platforms, what you're actually going to be able to see is not only which questions are more popular, but which ones are my users asking in a more frustrated tone of voice, for example. And that's going to give you really, really powerful insights into your customers, into your users. And then finally, biometrics. A big question that I always get, and we chatted about it before the meetup started tonight, is around security. So biometrics is definitely coming to these platforms as well. And what that means is the digital assistant will be able to recognize you based on your voice. Google have already announced a feature it's not a security feature, but it's a personalization feature of Google Home that allows you as a family to set up different profiles through your voice. So hopefully all of those things make you excited about voice as a future computing interface. And hopefully the stuff I talked about in the first half gave you enough of an interest in to go and try it yourself. I would 100% encourage you to. You can build a skill and publish it in 10 minutes, and with the templates that are out there and the potential lucrative rewards that are out there right now as well, definitely no reason not to. But yeah, thanks very much. I'm happy to take questions now, or if not, feel free to email me or reach out to me on Twitter. But yeah, thanks a lot.